Okay, I'm gonna start modeling the mask of this cute Reaper character they created, and if we might have some time, I would do the body as well. I'm doing it both in Maya, just entirely in Maya, and then in Zbrush and Maya again. You need Maya at the end anyway, anyhow, because you have to do your UV mapping inside Maya. So it's good you always analyze. Is there our brushes? Oh, okay, cool. It's good always if you analyze your model before modeling, your reference. So here I've got like a flat kind of squished square, if you like, and then like there are two cones that are shaped this way, and then two squares have been subtracted from the face. So that could be like kind of our way of approaching it inside Maya. So as you may see, I'm using a graphic tablet for modeling. You can borrow one from Loan Central or buy a cheap one. So this is how I set up my graphic tablet, just in case, you know. I use a graphic tablet even for editing or doing like very crazy stuff, like being within. So it totally replaces my mouse. The reason is so the movement of your wrist. So the movement for your mouse is always your wrist. So there's always this, like, after years of working, it's very unhealthy. So but like a tablet is all your shoulder. Well, muscles are here much larger. So I set up some my pen. Usually for everybody, this is the middle click, and this is this is right click, and this is double click. This is like a default for everybody, as you can see. But that's not what I like. I like the tip one to be middle and the top one to be right. So it's like that one right, this one middle. The reason is we are 3D artists and we use middle click very much. Not like a illustration artist that middle click doesn't work for them that much. For us, it's like, so that's why middle click works. I put it there just in case. So inside, let's say, Maya environment, middle click, panning, zooming, and tumbling around. Okay. So I start by creating. So inside Maya, as you will see, I will use a lot of shortcuts, and that's how I can speed up modeling process and any 3D creation process. Whatever I use, I keep saying, verbalizing it, so you don't miss it out. So everything in Maya can be done by holding Shift or Control and Shift. So like I hold Shift and I create a plane for now, because I want to project the image that I just have shown you, this image, within the Maya environment. So I just Shift right click, or you can click on that little icon over there, polygon plane. So you just create a plane, and then, so why I use shortcuts, sometimes you press Control spacebar, everything goes away. That's a nice and neat environment to work in. And then you start to use like shortcuts. So, or hotkeys, or menus, as it says. So Shift right click, and then adding a plane. So this plane gonna be one by one. I don't need any detail in it. I just make it larger. I go to the rendering menu. I apply a surface shader to it. This very black thing. and then when I apply that in the last tab, it asks, the surface shader is there, it asks for the color, out color, you click on that, and you click on the checker one, which means I'm going to texture it, and then click on File, and then point to where your texture is. My texture is in Pictures folder, which is this one. So when I press 6 on keyboard, I should see it in the scene, but this is stretched. Just want to make sure that it's in the right size. So I'm going to rotate that. In Maya, you know that W is for moving it around, R for scaling, and E for rotating. Okay. So I just hold. So you can rotate it like that, or just hold J on your keyboard, and it snaps, rotates. So it just snaps to different degrees. Or if you want to move things, you can hold J as well, and it snaps to just incremental movement, so it's more accurate. So I hold J, oops, what I've done, J, and snap it up. Okay, so that's enough. I have it there as a reference there. It's within the environment that I'm working, so it helps me out. So I start with a, so you might say, I'm going to add a sphere to start with. But let's add a sphere, and you see if I can work with the sphere. So the sphere, if I add a sphere here, like start to shaping it to look like the head of the Reaper, you see that the flow of the polygons is not what I want. The flow of the polygon on this, so how I zoomed in like that, I hold Control Alt and drag to the area I want. So the flow of the polygon here is, I see that the polygon should flow like that, and then like that. And it's not like the sphere. I pressed F on keyboard to frame the selected, which was sphere. So it's not that the flow is not like the one I want. But you may never know that a cube is a sphere as well. If you shift right click and cube and you press 3, you see that it looks like a sphere. So it could be a good start. So like sphere, and then maybe let me just have a look at that. So I'm gonna subdivide this sphere. Shift right click, or this cube that has turned into a sphere. Shift right click. So you see that like a lot of things is with shift right click. I keep pressing shift right click and then smooth. So it adds some detail here, which is, don't go to the very detail at the beginning. We are in the process of blocking. Blocking means like assembling the basic primitives. So here I just like say I can shape. So you see that the polygons are better shaped here. So I can right click and say edge. So grab these two edges. And then this time I hold Control Shift right click, or double click on this tool like move tool, and here you can turn on symmetry here, which is like I want to work symmetrical, okay? But like easily you can hold Control Shift and right click and go to the symmetry, activate your symmetry, and then you see that it moves in this symmetrical way. So the top part looks like this. The bottom part could be, I hold these edges and like shape it like that. This go to the vertices. This middle vertex could get inside. Okay, it could be the shape of that mask. So it has two, or it might be even thinner. So it has I'm gonna turn off the grid. Show the grid is off, and I'm gonna turn on the wireframe on surface shaded, which is this little button. Okay, so let's assume that this is like the shape of actually I'm happier to move these two slightly like that as well, and maybe shorten that part. Let's assume that, so whatever I do, when I'm happy, I right click and then object mode, back to object mode again. So let's say I'm happy with the basic primitive shape. So I just want to work on the horns. So shift right click, add a cone. So you see that this is a cone that doesn't look like a horn at all. But I go to the channel box, and first of all, I don't need that many axes. So I just go like maybe add 8, because if you press 3, that would do the job for you. And but you might need multiple you know, height polygons. I like it to be taller, and maybe, yeah, this one is enough. So what I can do is to position it in place and rotate it. Okay, maybe make it a little bit thicker. So how I'm doing it, you see that it happens in these two, not that one. I hold Control and press on that one. So it doesn't work on that axis, but it works on the combination of the other two axes. So I can start going to the edges and then double click on the edge I want. I turn off the symmetry. Hold Control Shift right click, symmetry off, because I'm not working on symmetry now. Maybe we, oops. You just saw that I accidentally selected the back plate. You can add it to a layer here and call it reference, and then lock it with this. So make it R, which means reference, so it doesn't get selected accidentally anymore. I'm going to save my scene before moving forward. So let's deal with the shapes of the horn. Actually, that one is like that. That one is like that. Both of them are like that. This part goes like this a little bit, and all of that has like a slight angle in this way. And it's definitely larger. You see that it's going to be tricky to fit in, but that's okay, don't worry, because we're going to merge everything in. So I duplicate that one, and you can mirror it by, so see like which direction needs to be mirrored. It needs to be mirrored in that red direction. Red is X, so just whatever is it, add a minus to it, and then it gets mirrored. Maybe it needs a little bit of adjustment on that. There's a much neater way of mirroring it. It's So if you freeze your transformation by modify freeze transformation, and also if you snap your pivot point, the point that is right in the middle, if I hold D, you can change the pivot point. If you hold X, you can snap the pivot point to the grid. So you can snap it to the grid like that, D, and snap it to the grid. Okay, and then here you just go to the mesh and mirror to X direction. Done. So you see that it's a neater way, but it's just, you see that it took a while to do that. So that's why maybe just like sometimes just duplicate and, you know, make the transformation minus would be okay. So you see that they have the Reaper has this little nice curve here. I just would like to make it, maybe I just grab this vertex, curve it up. Okay, and I add like another cube, press 3, make it larger. I'm going to use that as eye socket. Subdivide it or smooth it, let's say. So the Reaper has 2 eye sockets, and they are not 100% round. They're like this and like this. Put it back where it should be. One is here. One is here. Okay. So I hold. I select. So these ones should be subtracted from the main object. So select your main object. Make sure that the history is deleted. How to delete the history? So the history is the history of the stuff that you've done. On the subject, on the object before. So this is how you delete it. Edit, delete by type history, or as it says, Alt-Shift-D. So Alt-Shift-D, the history is deleted. It's going to be deleted for these 2 as well. So I select the one that needs to be subtracted from, so, or the main object, then select this one, and then the objects that are going to be subtracted. Again, Shift, right click, Boolean difference, and you get this ugly shape. You just press 3. If this one is problematic for you, because the reason is we don't have enough resolution on your object. So just like Shift, right click, and smooth up your object, maybe one more division here, and do the same thing on these ones. So how the same command has been applied on those 2 by pressing G, which is the repeating of the last command. So Alt-Shift-D, delete the history for all of that, and then maybe Shift, right click, Boolean difference. So you see this one is neater. So what I have there is much nicer than what I got here. Here is very coarse. Okay, so how can get there? So I select all of that, Shift, right click, Boolean and Union. So they become one object. Look at here. If I press 4, you can see that at that point the middle part, the intersection part, has been removed and they have been unioned. So then you have to retopologize it. I press 6 on keyboard to make it so. The flow of polygons. Let me see if I can open. Okay, we have a concept called Polygon Flow. So if you have a surface like this and a polygon moves, so you see that this is what you see is looks structurally right to your eye, because the polygon is moving to a right direction in every angle, and you always have a square or a square or a quad angle polygon. So this is called, like, this is a proper right topology. But look at this. This is just a mess. So if this polygon travels, this polygon flow comes, and here suddenly is interrupted with lots of, like, this is 4 corners. This one is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that's not right. Okay. Here also you see that the polygon doesn't flow well. There's a way around it, and it's called retopologize topology. So like the mathematics of making a proper surface, 3D surface, is called topology. So retopologize means like make the topology right again. So you saw that how I got to there. Shift right click, retopologize. But instead of clicking on it, I clicked on the little square next to it, which means to load the setting before applying it. You might want, like, so the resulting polygon would be 1,000. The resulting object would have less than 1,000 polygons, or 2,000 or whatever. So I'm going to keep it as 1,000. So I press retopologize, and you see that, like, now I get like a much better polygon flow. Look at this. The flow comes and just travels through. All of them are quadrangle or quad, and here to the horns it just travels right. If I turn that off, you see that shape has a lot of details that works better than what I have here. So here comes the time to do the sculpting. So if you're happy with what you've achieved so far, you can start sculpting it. So if you go to the sculpting menu, the first brush that you will use is move brush. Or you can achieve, like when you are in full mode, you can achieve a sculpt mode with shift right click, sculpt tool. That's it. And then hold U, oh, not U, what was that for changing? I don't know. Move tool. So you see that the brush is very large now. So hold B to make it, hold B and drag on your keyboard to make it smaller. Okay. We don't want it so small at the beginning, because at the beginning you just want to make like the shape right. Okay. So we might make it, hold it, like keep it as large enough as well at the beginning. Also, this brush also has a symmetry that you can double click on it and turn that on here. So I'm gonna make its symmetry on the X direction, the red one, so object X. So it works on both sides. So let's work and make it more closer. Actually, you can bring a little bit of character to it. So this part looks like ZBrushing. I don't like that bump here. So whatever your brush is, when you hold shift it's for smoothing. So I'm going to smooth that part out. And maybe I make the brush smaller, and you see that part on the tip is just like so messy. I smooth it to get a nice shape. For that sections, I undo that. You've got another brush better than a smoothing, which like it just kind of makes all the polygons relax next to each other, because you see that they are entangled here. So that one is the relax polygon tool. So when you add it, you see that they reorganize themselves next to each other, and then when combined with shift or smooth, it gives a nice arrangement of polygons. I go back to move and I smooth this area, and I smooth a little bit of here. Okay. Make it bigger. That one needs to get inside. Okay. I don't know what's going to happen in the back, but I assume that it's going to like be like this, I don't know. Or you can use a flattened brush and just like make it hold Alt or Control, no, Shift, no, and like kind of flatten it, and then like move those parts inside or whatever. Cool. I press Q or W, so I got up to here, and this is a little bit too many polygons, and you see I have a long history of stuff that I've done. So you can press Alt Shift D to delete your history to make it your scene and nice and neat as you go, if you don't need that history. Repair mask. Always keep a nice and neat naming in outliner. All the objects, so that one's gonna reference plate. Okay. I just want to say something, and that's like, if you want to like create wrinkles like this, you can create shift right click edge loops. Before adding edge loop, I'm gonna turn this into a much lower resolution, but before doing that, I duplicate the original and keep it, because I don't want to lose that one. So I'm gonna retopologize it to a much less amount of polygons, like only 400 polygons. Retopologize. You see that I get a very neat object, which is very manageable to work with as well. So if I press 1, it looks like this. If I press 3, so this is a much more efficient object to be sent to the game engines. And if I want to, let's say, create a crease here, so if I press 3 and I go to the Insert Edge Loop, you can see that I can add an edge loop right next to here before adding edge loop. The reason that you saw it thinking too much is because of this retopology node being there. So I Alt Shift D, delete the history, insert edge loop. I add one edge loop here and one edge loop on top of it, and I move them together, but don't kind of let them land on each other. So now you will see that like kind of it's better seen from this angle. There's a crease here. Actually, we can, if I double click on the edge and then move them together, and here move them together, oh yeah, you started to see that. So that's how you can change the size of them That's how you create a kind of a crease around the area by edge loops. You can do the same for the rest of that. I undo that. Let's say your procedure, your working procedure is to do the blocking in Maya and to add the kind of sculpting in ZBrush, because sculpting in Maya is very limited, is what you just saw. So how you do that? You just export what you got, like export selection. I'm going to export it on documents, let's say, easier to access, and call it Reaper Mask. But I'm going to export it as OBJ. Export it, and then in ZBrush, so this is ZBrush, hello, and how you start working in ZBrush, easy. I just want to make sure that, okay, so this is the ZBrush environment. Everything is so weird, and a little bit tricky to work around. But once we find our head around it, it's easy to work with. So first, so you got these two. ZBrush calls all the objects, what you call in Maya objects, ZBrush calls them tools. Why? Nobody knows. So go to the tool import and bring the Reaper. Where's the Reaper? It's there, sitting there. So you have to add it to the scene. You add it to the scene, and you want to start working, and then suddenly you see, like, you cannot work around it. So what you have to do is to turn on the edit mode. So you add it to the scene, make a poly mesh, and come on, what's going on? I think I missed it. Okay, draw it and press edit, or press or T on your keyboard, and then now it's ready to work with. Okay, so ZBrush navigation is also weird. So so you don't need to hold Alt or anything. So you just, like, if you are on top of the object and you start dragging, you start sculpting it. But if you are outside the object, you are going to navigate, tumble around it. If you hold Alt and right click, you're going to pan. And if you let go of Alt, you will zoom. And wherever you are, if you hold Shift, you will snap to that angle. So you saw that, like, I snap to top, now I snap to the front. If I'm to the side, I snap to the side. So it's a bit tricky at the beginning, but you will get used to it very quickly. So I go and assign a very commonly used material, which is called Skin Shade 4, and everybody likes it. It's a white material. And I'm going to start sculpting. But this is a very low resolution object. So you just go to the geometry and you divide it. So how many polygons? So the first amount of polygons were about 400. You remember that? One dividing is 1600. 6,000. 25,000. You see that, like, it's easily can get to like 1,000,000, and it's still working fine. So one way of working in ZBrush is when you are in, so you saw that, like, all the divisions is still kept. If I go back to the low subdivision, and if I press S, hold S on my keyboard, which is size, and size up my brush, and starts, let's say I'm going to click on the brush, and I'm going to grab a sculpting brush like a move brush. And so this is pretty much like Maya move. So you might see, oh, where's my symmetry? So just press X on keyboard, and you will have your symmetry activated. So let's say whatever you do on a low, so you see that I'm doing adjustments on the geometry in low poly, which is easier. And when I go to the high subdivision, the adjustments are applied. Okay. So let's say you're planning to have those cracks on the surface. Okay. You're gonna do some. Go to the brush. Let's say you're gonna do like some chiseling on the surface. You can start. That's horrible because the brush was very large. You can chisel your object. Might not be seen very well here, but the brush actually I just want is called Dam Standard, which is I press D and press S after that. So this is how you can find your brushes. Again, a long way of finding them. Like let's say I want my move brush. I press B for opening the brush, press M for opening the move, and press V for reaching it. So move brush is there. BDS is Dam Standard, which is a nice brush for creating creases. I don't want the crease, the cracks would be symmetrical. So I press X to turn that off. So there's one crack coming from the top to the eye and to the bottom. So at the beginning it looks not that interesting because we're gonna use another brush to complement it, but we're just gonna find the shape of it, and then we use a brush called trim border, which is not here. So sometimes you may hear the name of different brushes, but you cannot find it. Click on the light box. This is the first thing you see when ZBrush opens. You can open and close it here. Go to the brushes and go to the trim, and trim smooth border is there. Double click on it. It gets added to your project. So now you can so this one just kind of like smoothes the borders, but like we don't want it like that. Why it's too bright actually? Yeah, that might help me better. I use an alpha, like a square alpha, and I kind of like I hold Alt and drag. Oh, that's too much. Alt and drag towards the edges. It kind of creates this cracky feeling. But then I have to soften it. So hold Shift, pretty much like in Maya, and soften the edges. Maybe soften that part a little bit more. It's too deep. I wish I would have used a smaller dam brush, but that's okay. I will make this one larger. Another trick. And hold Alt. Oh, why this one is okay. Hold Alt and move it towards each other. Kind of like cracks. Creates this sharp, and then make it smaller. And then I smooth. You've got plenty of different alpha-based brushes. So let's say you've got, let's open the light box in the brushes. You want to add, oh, come on. Sorry, I changed the color accidentally. It's okay, we'll fix it later. So you want I don't know, different tracks or different textures like stitch like marks. So these are like alpha-based brushes. You can add, and then you can, this is too big, but what I can do is make it tiny and then stitch around. But you know what? The details doesn't matter at all. But it matters, but at the end. To me, what matters, what is important is the overall shape of our object. So as I said, so I like to create this within ZBrush as well from scratch. So here we just added details in ZBrush. But I like to start it from scratch as well. Okay, so let's imagine that we start everything again in ZBrush. I start with adding a sphere, simple sphere. Okay, you can find it again in Tools. I'm gonna close this color. Okay. You're in Tools, click on the tool and just add a basic sphere 3D. And then make sure it's Polymesh 3D. It means that you can start sculpting on it. Let's have a look at, I'm not going to use, so other stuff that will help you a lot in ZBrush is turning on the perspective and the floor. Floor is kind of like a grid in Maya, and Z towards us means that the depth is towards us. What you see, let's go over a reference. There's a tiny little app called Pure Ref, which I'm going to just download it now. It's called Pure Ref. It helps to keep the references on screen when we are working. I'm going to download the portable version of it, so then I share it with everyone. So without installing, you can use it. So I start with, again, a basic move brush. If you remember, BMV, move tool, and a very big move brush, and also turning on symmetry by pressing X. Then I can start kind of shaping it to what I like, to the shape of kind of the mask, holding Shift sometime to smooth things up. And if you remember, there was a nice curvature here, and it looks like kind of like this, but not that much in bottom. If we, I don't like this part, we look like that, and I soften it in general, soften the back too, holding shift. Let's say this is the initial shape of it. I send this pure ref file for you on your part. I just copy it in your support material, so anyone else who might want to use it would use it. Give it to the third year actually as well, they might need it. Okay, so how you just open it and run it, it's easy. Unzip it. You see that I'm just like run pure ref. Done. Okay. So how this one works, it's just a simple plate and it moves with right click, and it kind of like, if you press, so Control H for additional help. If you press so when I press Control Shift A, you see that it says it's always on top. So whatever I do, it's always there where you want it. Okay. So I go grab that reference photo of us, drag and drop it here, middle click, move it around this way, resize it. You can have multiple images here, drag and drop multiple images, have a collage of different images and work with them. It's very useful. It's help you to work efficiently. Okay, I keep that one here. So let's work on the head. I think I've got stuff to do. It has like a little bit of nice cheek here. Smooth that area. I give a little bit of nice curve here. Smooth that area. Okay. So we're gonna add some horn. How? Like there is a brush, a series of brushes called IMM. These brushes like IMM, Boolean, Basic, Gun, I don't know, Machine Parts, Spaceship. These are like tiny. So I have chosen a spaceship because I just wanna. Why not? Let's say you're gonna add parts. Just quickly populate a surface with like, you know, different parts and different things, like kind of, and make it like kind of, you know, you are creating a three things here. So this is like, these are the a series of like different, let's call it additive objects, objects that are gonna add it on top of your, you know, your shape and just create, you know, work as an additive objects. But like one of the most commonly used ones are these ones, IMM primitives, or like additive primitives. So you got like, so this is very useful for blocking. So you have your head added, then you want to add a sphere here, maybe, and then select move tool. These move and so MSR, or move, scale, and rotate, are pretty much like Maya tools. You can scale it. If you don't see it properly positioned in the middle, you can hold Alt and move it to the pivot point to where you want. It's okay. I hold Alt and move it and bring it back in place. Okay. Rotate it a bit. Scale it up. Rotate it a bit. Okay. Nice. Let's grab move tool and start playing around with that. When I hold Shift, it just smooths up. And it's smaller than this, so I select Scale and scale it slightly down. Move it back in place. Okay. Sometimes you see that like the main face has been grayed out. Why? So let's go back to the draw. This has been automatically masked out. So if I hold Control and drag outside, the mask gets deleted. So the mask is an area that you don't want to be touched. So let's say you just you hold Control and mask this area, and now you start scaling. So you see that everything is touched except the mask. Or when you hold Control and click outside, the mask is getting inverted. So now just the area within the mask is controlled. If you want to soften the edge of the mask, hold Control and click on that area. So it just softens the mask. If you want to control the visibility, if you hold Control and Shift and click on an object, that object becomes visible and everything else gets hidden. Or if you Control Shift and click outside, it gets reversed back. Or if you hold Control and Shift and drag, the only part that you have box dragged will be visible. Okay, so let's do a little bit of Boolean here as well. I can create, let's say, we're going to add two objects. So I'm going to actually, I just wanted to add to another layer or another subtool, but I'm adding it to this subtool, so you will learn one extra object, extra command, let's say. Let's grab that primitive brushes. We're going to add sphere where the eyes should be. Move them closer to each other and inside. Okay. So I'm going to separate these two spheres from the main body. So there's one way of getting around it. Actually, this one could come here easier, because there's a lot of like tools that we, commands that we need to use, and they are on this right hand bar. So if I go back to the draw or press Q on my keyboard, you see that, like, you can say that so under the subtools, this split, so we can split the, let's say, mask points. So you see that the eyes are in a separate layer now. I just move them down, so we have a layer for the head and a layer for the eyes. So there's one live Boolean kind of tool here, so you can activate it. And here you've got Boolean commands on them, like this is subtract, this is union, this is intersection. So we just use subtract. But what does it mean? Why it says live Boolean? It means that if you grab that one and move it around, it just kind of like interactively responds tells you what's going to happen, what is happening. So let's say this one is not 100% round, so it's kind of like, it has this kind of like oval shape, and it's rotated inside. So we can use this live Boolean to achieve that. So let's say you are happy with that. So in the Boolean, and say that make Boolean mesh. So then it adds the mesh here, which you can click on it and then suddenly get it within your viewport. So this is just a table blocking. So how we can start sculpting and smoothing and working on it. So there's a tool, there's a way of moving forward and like blending things together, and it's called Dynamesh. So Dynamesh is under geometry, Dynamesh, and you can go with the resolution that you have, or you can choose like a higher resolution. Maybe 400 is nice. I click on Dynamesh. You didn't see anything happens because I'm going to go use a lower resolution so you see what's happening. So look at this edge here and press Dynamesh. You see, like, it just suddenly kind of converted things into a blended meshes together. So, and if the resolution would be high, like 400, then the Dynamesh, that edges will kind of be preserved. So once you convert it, so these objects, these separated objects, as they all get blended together. Now you can start kind of, I start with a, actually I would like to still use move tool. Very large move tool, and smooth some areas, smooth around the eyes. Move things. I see a little bit of nice curvature here, which I missed. I can retain it somehow. Smooth. Ooh. Okay, so once you're happy, can smooth the brush. Once you are happy, you can start sculpting it. Like, let's say, creating a very commonly used sculpt tool is clay build. It's BCB. No, is that the one? Clay. Yes, clay buildup. B. No. It's this one, clay buildup. Yeah, BCB. So this works like a. I'm gonna go to Scheme 4. This works like a clay buildup brush that you, if any one of you might have done sculpting, very similar to that. Sometimes you want to like create just like bring a lot of masses at parts of your objects. Use this brush and like add masses where you want. So let's say we want to create some mass here around the eye or eyebrows. Let's say clay build is a squarish brush, but you can change the alpha. You can make it like kind of more roundish. I like square because it's rough and it's rugged and it just quickly gives me like kind of a nice shape. So once you're happy, easy, hold shift and smooth things up. Okay. You can use nope, BDS, damn standard, to create creases. It must be tiny. And as you saw, like for crack, let's say let's do these two crackers. I am going to use actually you can keep using damn standard multiple times. Okay, and then that trim smooth borders. Where are you? With a alpha brush and holding Alt. Or not Alt if you want to deepen the area. Alt kind of adds to it. Make it cracky. If that's too much, smooth it out. Easy. Oops. So it's just fun. Like, is it usable now? Like, can I just send this into Maya? No, it's about 500,000 polygons, so it's not usable as it is now. But there's a process of turning it into a low poly and yet preserving all the details. which I'm going to go through it. Okay, so we don't need, let's say we are happy with the result. Well, of course I'm not happy because that one needs a lot of better refinement. And this is not supposed to mean, have that terrible name. I call it Reaper Mask. That's a better name. I can hold Control Shift A, and that one, the always on top, gets turned off, so we don't see it because we don't need it now. This is the trick for that. So the pipeline is this. What I'm doing now is to create polygroups, and then create out of polygroups create a Z-remesher, which is a retopology within. So retopology, as I have explained, is creating a nice and neat flow of polygons within around your model. So if I press this little poly frame, you will see that it has millions, well, not millions, thousands and thousands of polygons. It's not usable. So you need something low poly. So I duplicate that one. So let's hide the original one. Let's work on this one. I renamed that one remesh. Okay. Before remeshing, so let me just remesh it, and then I create polygroups and then remesh it. Some people just like jump onto the remeshing it right away. That's why they don't get good results out of that. So Z-remesher, poly count 5, it should be around 5,000. Let's see what it does. I press Z-remesh. You see that it starts working. Okay. So you see that it has generated a low poly version of what we had. It's about 5,000 polygons, and it's much neater. It's much more usable. But what happened? I lost the detail, did I? So this is what we do. Like even we can go lower than that. Actually, we can go like 3,000. So and then Z-remesh again. So this is like, you see that it's much neater, but like the first problem is the flow of polygons is not as neat as what you expect. So that's why we just go. I'm gonna keep this. I'm gonna create another duplicate of the original one, and I call it remesh group. So this one has both, this one's going to have both remeshing and polygroups. For polygroups, you just like, so at the moment, the reason that, actually I was just surprised why this one looked good, because the reason that this one looks okay, the polygon, is that the original one had already polygroups. Look at these groups. So you see that it's been categorized. But if for any reason you lose your polygroups, let's say I'm going to press Control W. So when you press Control W, your polygroups gets lost. Or the selected thing becomes a polygroup. So then you start. So if you don't have any polygroups, you just like start creating one easy by just masking. Paint. Hold Control and mask around an area that is supposed to be one polygroup. So this area. So like how you realize that an area should have a polygroup. just study the flow of the muscles, human face muscles, let's say. It's gross, I know, but let's have a look at it. So if I'm going to create a polygroup for a humanoid or human-like creature, or any creature that has muscles underneath their skin, I look at the flow of the muscles underneath. So here you can see that around the eye, there's a round muscle group. Around the mouth is a round muscle group. Nose has such a, so this is kind of a guide for a human face polygroups. The same polygroups that you want to create. So you see that like a nice and neat polygroup for the human face looks like a flow of muscles around it. So the reason that we do that, because at the end we're gonna like create deformation. Let's say a human face smiles and the mouth smiles and opens, or eyes gets closed or opens, and this deformation should follow the flow of muscles. So that's why we create polygroups. So I assume that like that part, let's hold Control and add that to a polygroup. Control W, you might not see it, but when you go to the poly F, you see that they are added in one group. Inside eyes, I'm not going to come outside because okay, Control W, you see that that one is also a group. You can hide a polygroup by holding Control and Shift and click on it, and click outside to reverse it. Actually, I just want to hide that one too. The reason I have hidden them because it helps me to because I want to put all the eyebrows in one polygroup because they have their own nice and neat deformation. So them in one polygroup, Control W. Oops. Underneath the eye also another polygroup. Yeah, you see that that one has, that one has. I can hold Control Shift and click outside. So I have a better arrangement of polygroups here. One big polygroup could be for the just back of it. Let's do that. Control W. Holding Alt for panning. Yep. Now if I, actually I'm going to delete this. If I turn this using Dynamesh, which is a retopology tool, like let's say 3,000 polygons, we want 3,000 polygons, and press Zbrush, it just does a little bit of work. Okay, so this is a very nice arrangement of polygons for my character. Okay. So that's how I create a retopologized version here. Actually, I could go even lower than that, lower than 3000. Let me do it. I can go for like 1000. Yeah, that's what I want. Okay. So now how we transfer the, so this is a very high poly mesh here, which has details. It looks nicer. This is what we want. This is a low poly mesh that has a better is usable, but doesn't it lacks the details. What we should do, we should create a proper UV for this, and then project the details from high poly to the low poly. So we export. We click on the remeshed version, export it back to Maya. I'm going to use the same naming, and we go to Maya. I'm going to hide this. I'm going to import that one from that folder. It's there. Okay. So what is UV mapping? So skinned cow, poor cow. So this is a cow, and this is when you take the skin off. That's why everyone hates UV mapping. UV mapping is unwrapping. So you've got like a, so you're gonna paint over the skin of a creature or anything. You have to unwrap the skin of it. You have to kill it, unskin it, and then like paint over it. It's pretty much like that terrible. So like when I'm going to, so I'm going to go to the UV editor, UV editor, and you see that there's nothing here, okay? And I'm going to say that the texture, use the UV texture map, okay? When I click on that, it shows 0. The first step for 99%, well, not 90%, but like for 50% of the objects that you have, like let's say you've got a plane here, and you want to have a texture on it, so you just go to the shift right click and go to the mapping and do a planar projection mapping from the direction that you want. So here, let's say we want to project a texture from Z direction. Shift right click, mapping, planar map Z. Suddenly you see it gets a UV mapping assigned on it. Let me open the, so you see that the UV mapping is there, but that's not the right UV mapping because it has a weird deformation here on the edges. So if we assume that we think of this, oh come on, why I get, I'm going to move this here. So if we think that this is that poor cow and we're going to unskin it, so what is the process of that? So I would say that the horns will be a separate part, and then they will be unskinned from like a seam, like a cut. The front part would be one, around the eyes would be, okay. So let's create these cuts, okay. So the first step for a UV mapping is finding where to cut, where to start cutting. So I would suggest we cut around the horn. So shift right click. Well, first right click and select the edge loop by double clicking. Shift right click, and then you will see nothing here because we are not in the UV mapping setup. But when you go to your UV mapping window, you will see when you you see that I have this one has rotated around and traveled through the back, and we didn't see that. I'm glad that we didn't click on it. So let's select another edge loop, maybe this one. Yeah, but that one not properly down enough. So I start with this. I like that one. I get that one, but I know that it just kind of like goes away here, that part. So we hold Control and unselect that, whatever is selected wrongly. We just don't. Okay, I'm gonna start from here. Like, let's go through the cut from here. You see the cut? And we don't need that one. We don't need that one. We don't need these ones, and also that. Okay, that's kind of a loop around the horn. And so I shift right click here and I say cut. Now we have to select a, so like this is kind of, this looks like a closed cone, but I have to find a way to cut that closed cone as well. So you can select like a seam or something. Usually you select something from back. So you can select first and double click and go high up and double click, and that one, and the last part. Shift right click here and cut. So you get a cut over there as well. So why we did all of these cut and cut? See, you will see the magic just now. I right click on that face, double click on those ones, and I'm gonna move them up. You see that they're not getting separated from the object, but the UV layout gets separated. You can shift right click on them, unfold, unfold, and you get suddenly a nice unskinned or unwrapped version, or like flattened version of those horns. So let's do that for the body. Actually, I would like to cut from here, just go down. So let me just double click here, see where it goes. It goes all around the body and top. We don't need those areas. But if I press 4, you can see that it has traveled through all up to here and on top, which is what we want. So we shift right click, cut here. Maybe around the eyes as well. What about this? Okay. That was nice, but there's this problem here that it goes way there, but we want it to be stopping here. So shift right click, cut here as well. So let's double click on the faces. So I have these different pieces as well, which I can unfold them. Select these one, press G, which is the last repeated command. And then select all of them, press Ctrl L to layout them. I've done the UV layout in few minutes, which is like very efficient and nice. So this geo is ready for sending back to, if I turn on the texture on a texture mapper, you see that like this boxes are kind of nicely, actually this one has to move slightly down. Here we have good spots. So this one has a nice UV mapping all around it. Okay, I'm going to turn off the texture. So this is ready to be sent back to ZBrush. So UV mapping is done on the same model that has been z-remeshed or retopology has been applied on. Export, selection, and ZBrush UV has been applied. Back in ZBrush, we're gonna insert it to our project. Okay, I'm gonna import it first, and I'm gonna insert it. That's the one. So you see that it is there added. Now I'm going to delete this one because we don't need it, because that one doesn't have any UV, but this one has a UV on it. So we want to project. So you see that how nice the detail will be going. So I'm gonna go this is how we do it. We make level, detailed levels, and then keep projecting it from high poly to low poly. So yeah, I'm gonna call this high poly, maybe high, and that one low, just in case you know the difference, what's going. The low one has a proper UV, but it doesn't have the detail. The high one doesn't have UV, but has the detail. So you just select both of them, and you go to projection, and you project all. So what you will get is that, hang on, oh sorry, I've done it the other way around. So I should select this high poly and then the low poly, and then they both should be on, visibility, high poly and then low poly, and then project. Yeah, that's how. So then, okay. Cool. So what we do next is we start adding details, like you go to the geometry, divide it. So your low poly now has one level of divisions, which is 9,000 polygons. From high to low, project. Now you go to geometry, add another divisions. You got 37,000 polygons. You go to the high poly to low poly and project. Select your low poly, make sure it's selected, go to the geometry, add another division. You've got 150,000 polygons now. Back to the subtools, high poly to low poly, project. Then again, maybe we do one last division. We got 600,000. So this should give me a very close approximation of high poly projection. Cool. So if I turn Okay, that one was going to take a while. Done. Okay. If I turn this off, so look at this. This is a low poly mesh. This is the low poly mesh, but it has the detail in higher divisions. So when I go to geometry, so when I travel from, this is like division 1, which was 2,000 polygons, up to 600,000 polygons. Now, okay, now we're going to create a displacement map for our object. So you got this displacement map part. So this geometry, it has high resolution and low resolution as well. So when you want to create a displacement map, make sure that you are on the highest resolution. So the reason that we've gone through all this pain was because the geometry that we have sculpted and painted had no UV. So we could have generated UV, send it there, so without like going through this process. But sometimes you just start from scratch within ZBrush. So ZBrush doesn't do a proper UV for you. So you send it to Maya to do the UV. So that's why this object, which we call it this tool or object that has multiple geometry levels, you make sure that you are on the highest geometry because this is the highest detail. And then here you create a displacement map, which I'm going to create it now. Okay, oh, sorry. We have to switch to the lowest subdivision. I just said it the other way around. So we just go to the lowest, go to the displacement map, and create the displacement map. It just got generated. Can you see the, like kind of like this? This is a very low poly geo. Actually, you can kind of simulate a smooth version of that. But you got this like low poly subdivision. Let me turn the displacement on and off. So you got this low poly object with this displacement texture added on. So you can export the displacement map. I'm going to export it just now as a PSD, maybe. Displacement. And then you can use that displacement map for rendering back in Maya. So like this is your geo. When I press 3, it looks smooth, but it doesn't have details. But when I'm gonna, where did we save the displacement? Displacement is here. This is the displacement map. It has generated. You can see nicely that it has all the details that you want. You can save it as a JPEG for now, which is more than enough for us. And in Maya, you can add a, I'm going to just quickly add a, very basically, I'm going to load file window, plugin manager, Redshift, and do a quick rendering using Redshift. I'm adding a basic dome light, press render. Let's save the project. That is bad. Okay. maybe I use Arnold, doesn't matter. I use a Arnold dome light, and I use a, let's see if, yeah, just basically renders it out, and I'm gonna add a basic basic light here as well. And then you just assign a shader, a basic shader. I'm just starting with that. I just assigned like a very basic shader, like let's say a Lambert, and then inside the Lambert, you just click on the hypershade, grab the shader, actually the surface, oh no, grab the shader with that, so this one, if we load the shader from, it has this Lambert 1. So you see that it has a displacement shader input that you can, so this is where you bring the displacement and assign it. So we save the displacement here, and I'm gonna take it to my scene. And so okay, so we have to look at our UV, because sometimes ZBrush has a like kind of a different UV. So our UV, like the head is up there, but in ZBrush the head is down here, so things has been flipped, you see. So what I have to do is rotate the frame like 180 degree. So make sure that it matches with, actually it's more than rotation, it's flipping. So it's gonna, okay, I'm not gonna rotate it, I'm gonna mirror it. We can fix it here. Control T, unlock it, Control T, right click, flip vertical. That's it, that's what we want. Save it as JPEG again. Actually I can overwrite on the JPEG we had, so it suddenly updates inside Maya automatically. So it's gonna get the new JPEG, which will be, yeah, you see it just quickly got updated. So that's how it should be. Then you just assign the displacement to displacement. If you use Redshift, you have to add a Redshift displacement node in the middle and then assign it. So this is not going to show the displacement now. Well, it shows, and it's very severe. So like how we can control displacement, you just select your object and you Control A and go to the Arnold displacement attributes, and the height would be way less. Well, so you see that starts to show those like details and cracks in it. I have to have a better lighting, so I'm going to go grab like just a quick so for our assignment we're going to create our own HDRI. Don't forget that we're going to generate our HDRI, but at the moment for this I just download one ready one. So these HDRIs are free, so I'm going to grab one, like let's say a 2K version here, and assign it. So you saw that me using a Redshift, an Arnold dome light, which was that one. So it means I should assign a HDR here to the HDR that we just downloaded, which is this one. Oops, sorry. And render it again. Okay. So you see that like this is a, well actually the details is a little bit too much. That one could go slightly less. So this is a very low poly geo. This one just has not a very low poly, but a low poly. It has about 2,000 polygons. It doesn't have 600,000. So it doesn't need to have. So you see that if I go to the high detail in my geometry to be able to see the details, so I need 600,000 polygons to be able to see the details. However, with that trick, by exporting the displacement map, I am able to use the efficiency of a kind of a low poly geometry, yet having the detail added on top in the moment of rendering. Great. So that was from like two techniques of two basic techniques of modeling in Maya and ZBrush, and like all the stuff that happens around them.